Excellent. Thank you, Rachel. Well, welcome everybody. We're super excited to be here today. I'm going to be moderating our conversation as we go through our topics with our panelists this afternoon. So I just wanted to go through some quick agenda items. So I'm going to introduce our moderators. I am joined today by a couple of folks here from Iteris, and I will have our panelists introduce themselves. I'll go over a brief overview of our session, and then we'll jump right into our content for today's webinar. We do plan to reserve some time at the end to answer some questions, and then we'll close this out with a couple of next steps. So again, next slide. So today I am joined by Delane Adkins and Anita Vandervalk. I oversee our commercial vehicle operations business unit for Iteris, and I'll be helping lead the discussion today with our panelists. Delane Adkins will go ahead and introduce herself now.
Thanks, Whitney. I'm Delane Adkins. I'm a senior project manager with Iteris, and I lead up the team we perform consulting services for ITD program management as well as PRISM program management. We also provide project management services and business analysis services to state government. And I coordinate closely with our ITS team, which leads us to Anita Anita?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Anita. I am VP for Business Development for Iteris, and I'm going to be assisting Whitney and Delane today with the Q&A session.
Excellent. Thank you both. All right, next slide, Rachel. So today we are joined by 5 speakers from industry and state agencies, and I'm going to hand off to each of our panelists to do a brief introduction for themselves. And our first panelist here is Mike Haney. Mike?
Good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. As stated, my name is Mike Hamey. I'm the Transportation Director for the Kansas Corporation Commission. Prior to joining the Commission, I worked for a private hazardous materials operator. We operated more than 100 commercial vehicles in interstate commerce, intra and interstate commerce. And so I have a good understanding of both the private and the government sectors. Do I want to wait till everybody introduces themselves before I go into my highlights?
Yep. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please, and we'll go through introductions, and then we'll come back to some of the content. So Mitch Surratt from Oklahoma DOT is next.
Good afternoon. My name is Mitch Surratt. I'm the Deputy General Counsel at the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. Been there for, 29 years. Over the last decade, I've also been the ITD Division Program Manager, and I oversee all the CMV-related programs with the department.
Excellent. Thanks, Mitch. And next we have Derek Bars.
Yes, my name is Derek Bars. I am with HNTV Corporation as a Senior Project Manager. We are supporting the Florida Department of Transportation and Central Office on a lot of their commercial vehicle operations. Recently retired from the Florida Highway Patrol. I was their Chief of Commercial Vehicle Enforcement and also the Chair of Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance Industry Enforcement Modernization. So I'm proud to be here and represent Florida DOT and HNTV Corporation.
Excellent. Thank you. And Tina?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Tina Sanders. I'm a Technical Support Manager for the Motor Carrier Division. I've worked in various capacities for MDOT, SHA for 29 years. I've worked in engineering, the Signal Shop, and Motor Carrier Division. I'm involved in various freight groups, and basically I'm just a little worker bee.
Excellent. Thanks, Tina. And Dwayne?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dwayne Pierce. I work with the Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration. I currently am responsible for their data education and compliance section, which deals with industry outreach and regulatory training for industry and government. In addition to that, I've also been a Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration Associate Staff Instructor for the NTC regarding the North American Standard Roadside Inspection Program for the last 18 years. And I'm also retired from the Maryland State Police, was with their Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division for about 28 years.
Thank you. So just to give a brief overview of the content for today's discussion, as we see our economy flatten organically as technology and industry removes a lot of the barriers across the data that's originated and passed through our networks and infrastructure, we really find it important to assess the readiness at the state level and agency level to share data and remove any of those barriers to reciprocity. So we'll be going through and discussing a few key elements around background information from our speakers, and also discuss some barriers that they've faced. And then we will also talk about some opportunities for future initiatives that we're looking forward to achieve this reciprocity. Next slide, please. So as we talked, we're going to start with some background information. So kind of the flow of how we want to handle things here is have a good open discussion. So we have some questions that we pose to our panelists, and we will kind of hand off to each panelist to add their insight as we go through each question. So if you want to go to the next slide, Rachel, we'll start with our first question. So the first thing we posed to our panelists was, what types of data do you share amongst the agencies? And I think on this one, we are starting with Mike Hamey.
Okay. Well, we share a number of different types of data here in the state of Kansas. The Intrastate Operating Authority, Intrastate Service, IRP, non-IRP registration information, things like that. And I think that this is where I'm going to kind of emphasize on some of the program highlights that we've been able to use with this data over the years, and really working together with a lot of the sister agencies here in the state of Kansas, the Department of Revenue, Department of Transportation, Kansas Highway Patrol, our Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration partners, and industry partners. We've been able to develop a model education program for the state of Kansas. And this is where we first adopt state law or federal law, state law. We have that 3-year window that we adopt the federal regulations for state law. So when a motor carrier decides to operate in interstate commerce, it's a rather seamless process. We also provide compliance information. We have a model education program. We really kind of taken the stance we need to educate before we regulate. And this is where we have 10 investigators provide 6 education programs across the state once a week. So we have motor carriers that have access to local resources in their area. They don't have to drive over 2 hours to get to a training session, and the local resources there to provide any information they need to help their compliance for their company. We also we have the 10 investigators perform comprehensive investigations, compliance reviews on the new and existing and high-risk motor carriers. Then we also take action when unsafe conditions are found. These programs have really helped us reduce the number of accidents involving Kansas-based carriers in comparison to our Midwest states and on the national average. So we're really proud of how that program has worked out, the education and compliance program. We also, the programs have reduced the number of conditional and unsatisfactory rated compliance reviews based on the same Midwest states and the national average. So it's really helped reduce accidents and also those serious violations that show up in the ratings through the compliance review process. Another area is with the Unified Carrier Registration Program. This data, our training, and working together with our sister agencies. In 2007, the Unified Carrier Registration Program replaced the Single State Registration Program. Since that time, Kansas has been able to register the highest percentage of motor carriers by a single state. So we're proud of what we are able to do and how we continue to work and enhance our programs. In 2015, working together with our core group here in Kansas, we developed the Kansas Trucking Regulatory Assistance Network, KTRAN. And what this does, it provides web-based tools to determine compliance requirements for Kansas motor carriers. It gives them a compliance wizard. A compliance wizard allows a company, either a new or existing company, to run through a series of questions. And at the end of the series of questions, they'll have a printout that states what compliance may apply to that company. It covers safety, operating authority, CDL direct testing, IRP, FDAT, hazmat, commercial zones, all that type of information here in Kansas to help them be successful, especially for the new carriers starting up, because that's been an issue over the years. So we wanted to make sure that they had the tools necessary to get off on the right foot. So we're really proud of the compliance wizard. We also provide a customer account module for easy access to information 24 hours a day for their intrastate operating authorities. Initially, for the first couple of years, it was UCR, and then we transitioned to the NRS for the UCR piece. We also have an interactive dashboard, which allows us to send alerts, announcements, and then Q&A with the industry and have a chat line. Electronic applications for operating authority and driver waivers, and then some of the key interfaces with the program. The National Online Registry provides electronic access to liability insurance. The Information Network of Kansas for access to KDOR driver motor vehicle records and KCC intrastate renewals. The Kansas Highway Patrol, we have the through CView, where we see the KCC authorities and intrastate out of service orders, and the Kansas Department of Revenue will through CView will provide both the KHP and KCC with the non-IRP and IRP registration information. So those have been key elements to a lot of the programs we've had to really bolster our education and compliance program, and our industry has really performed well with these services.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Mitch, I think that you had a couple of talking points here.
Yes, very similar to Mike. In Oklahoma, we share most, if not all, our interstate and intrastate data across several agencies, one including the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, which is more on a regulatory side, and then the Department of Public Safety for law enforcement, which is the Highway Patrol, which is Troop S, which is the size and weights troop for the Highway Patrol, in addition to the oversized overweight permits office, which issues all permits. Both agencies have similar goals at times, but also they can differ in certain ways. So we try to pass that data across both agencies. And same thing as Mike, that we're talking oversized overweight permit information, operating authority, registration, inspections, et cetera.
Excellent. Thanks, Mitch. Tina Sanders, I think that you had a couple of things to discuss here as well.
Yes, thank you. Just as Mike and Mitch have mentioned, we have a lot of those programs in place. We also have recently, over the last 2 years, tied the CView to our oversized overweight hauling permit system, the Maryland One system. We've added a lot of functionality. We now have a joint permit system, so we issue joint permits for the state and the city in one program. We're actually now working on counties, adding county data to help expedite the process. We have county roads on our permits just for continuity of route. But so it's a permittee's responsibility to call the counties and get permission. There seems to be a problem across the states. So we're looking to add the county bridge ratings restrictions into our system for the counties to expedite that process. In our Maryland One system, it also allows for allied agencies and enforcement to access read-only. So when we have a lot of issues, let's say a permit in Pennsylvania is $200,000, and they always seem to lose weight when they come into Maryland, crossing the state border. So we allow the troopers and the allied agency state members to access our permit system to log in, and they can have a read-only access to see what the permit actually was. We also have a permit violation database. We're trying to develop one that all states can share. A lot of times people are violating permits in other states, or they're violating in states all along their routes. And unless we share that information, we don't know who the bad characters are, the shady ones. We also share emergency declaration information, routing restrictions, all this type of information, working with the working groups. There's a CTSO, and I know the Freight Working Committee works great on that, sharing information.
Thanks, Tina. Dwayne, you want to add some input?
Yeah. Just to add to what Tina was saying, that in addition, all of the roadside inspection data regarding carrier information is shared across all state agencies, actually all national agencies. I mean, it's throughout the nation. In addition to that, the Maryland Virtual Waysite program is a network of weigh in motion, real-time screening sites throughout the state of Maryland. We have 20 of them at present. It's it's provided access to enforcement for to do a deep dive into the data and analytics to be able to determine when is the most effective or when the biggest problems are regarding safety violations in specific areas throughout the state of Maryland. In addition to that, we also, through our office at SHA, will reach out to identified carriers if we see that they're having an issue or possibly having an issue regarding voluntary compliance. We'll actually reach out to the carrier and offer to them the ability to get them back in compliance or adjust what they need to have done regarding moving of permit loads or weight issues or things of that nature. So it's not all just about enforcement. It's also about voluntary compliance and sharing the information with industry to help them in their ability to be safer.
Excellent. Yeah, I really like that sharing across both the public and private sector. You know, there's lots of barriers between those two aspects, and seeing those come down in certain cases like this is really promising. Derek Bars, do you want to provide some? Oh, sorry about that, Dwayne. Go ahead.
I just said it's not too often we're able to get to do a do-over. So.
Thank you, Whitney. Right. Thank you, Whitney. Just a couple of things just to add to this on a different perspective. We're working closely or trying to work with some of our neighboring states in Florida with our oversized overweight permits and other information that we can share with them. We're working on some MOUs, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that later in some other questions that we have. But one of the things, for example, that we're trying to synthesize as the requirements to increase interstate mobility between the states and our policies that we have, of course, between the two states. For example, our neighboring state of Georgia may require an oversized overweight permit to travel at night. They'll allow that, but we do not. So we're working to allow that carrier to be able to come into our state at a safe location, and we're not issue any sort of citations or anything like that until they can get a permit that is valid for traveling at certain times. So we're trying to work with them and being able to allow mobility, and it's working out. We've got some bugs to work out, but I think that's something that we will be able to do in the future. But another thing that we have is called a container number database, and it's sharing of LPR camera information and data, where a trooper or law enforcement personnel or whomever can log in and look to see where a particular truck or carrier was at a certain time. And we use this for enforcement a lot of times for hours of service, even though you had ELDs and things of that nature. We were being able to put the bad characters that was mentioned earlier out of service based off of tracking and where they were when they may said they were somewhere else. So sharing that data with our state partners and also other states has been extremely valuable in putting bad characters out of service, and then also helping the movement of different oversized overweight permits on the other topic that I mentioned first.
Excellent. Thank you. Next slide, please. So to kind of round out some of the background information, and we talked about some of these elements in our previous responses, we were looking to understand what activities are happening to share this data across state boundaries or regionally sharing it. And I know, Mike, you discussed sharing data with industry as well, and Dwayne, you've also discussed that. And I know we have some talking points for Derek and Tina on this question, but I'd be interested to hear from Mike and Dwayne first on how we establish some of those partnerships and sharing across the boundary between public sector and private sector. So Mike, do you want to take that one first?
Well, I think the key to this is really understanding the elements you're dealing with. Communication is always key, whether it's dealing with industry or enforcement or sister agencies or foreign-based states and their enforcement. Some of the key elements to share data. We've worked hard in Kansas. We come up with a couple additional programs that have been very successful based on sharing data. We were able to implement an impound statute back in about 2006 that what this does, I think Kansas is probably one of the few states, if the only state, that has this, since I've been listening through CVSA and other areas. Any motor carrier that is found to be operating with an out-of-service order, or failed to comply with the CIS order, or failed to obtain commission operating authority, failed to commit a commission assessed civil penalty, or has otherwise failed to comply with the commission order, we have the ability through the Highway Patrol, through an inspection, to impound those vehicles to help force compliance. And the statute was that we have, the implementing statute was very broadly written, so it incorporated not only state out-of-service orders, but federal out-of-service orders. So working with these different agencies, FMCSA industry, this wouldn't have been successful had we not worked together on this project. And this has been a very promising project. We through a normal year, we may impound up to 36 company vehicles a year. And those vehicles are held until they get in compliance with either that state, in most cases, a federal order. So the data sharing is key, and developing those bonds and working relationships is very key as well.
Excellent, thanks. Dwayne, do you want to add some input with the carrier training aspect that you guys are working through and sharing some of that data for voluntary compliance?
Sure.
And if that crosses any of the state boundaries as well?
Sure. Since implementing the industry outreach program about 8 years ago, we've actually been able to reach out and interact with approximately 8,000 individuals and companies seeking to be voluntary compliant with the regulations. It's worked out very well to keep an open line of communication with industry. Because ultimately, the name of the game is uniformity and compliance, and really, I mean, almost to a motor carrier, everyone has had positive response back regarding the training that they've received. We try to be as convenient as possible to them, keeping in mind companies having various shifts and things of this nature with their fleet, with their operators. So the least that we can do is be as absolutely accommodating as possible. In addition to that open line of communication continues well past the data training, because it's very much appreciated that they have a direct line of communication to get the most up-to-date information and accurate regulations that are on the book and how it pertains to their company, so they don't have to learn as they go. They can call and they can know before they go, and that's proven to be a very successful link to industry and getting them up to date on the regulatory requirements as well, or at least so we have found. In addition to that, the information that we obtain on the virtual waysite program, and with what Tina had mentioned earlier about the violation database for permits. We do have administrative sanctions that are in place for habitual offenders of the permits, either falsification applications or violations of the general conditions. And it allows us an opportunity to interact with them in the form of a one-on-one meeting after they've achieved the parameters of what constitutes an administrative sanction to be imposed. And again, I mean, we found that as a result of implementing that and holding the motor carriers accountable regarding compliance with the permits, we've gotten a very positive response from that too. In the fact that we don't see repeat offenders once we have a sit down with them and discuss the possibilities of what could go wrong, even up to and including suspending the ability for their company to get a permit forever. It definitely has a positive impact moving forward with industry. Not to mention the fact that the data on the virtual will we've even worked with industry with that. If they know they're coming through, because they're not posted in any secret location. It's well known where they're located, and if they're coming across a specific virtual waste site and want to know, perhaps a specific weight aspect or how they're loading specific equipment on their vehicles, they can call and we can let them know what the virtual information is indicating on their vehicle. So it's just another way of keeping the line of communication open with industry personnel.
Excellent perspective. Thank you. Tina, did you have anything to add on sharing across state boundaries or regional boundaries here?
Yes, and I thought it was important to add, Dwayne, which you may want to add about the virtual way, the information that we share with surrounding states when they had that accident on 83 with the truck.
Oh, right. That actually, thanks for reminding me that the data, we also provide the ability for states, or at least contiguous states, to Maryland to log into the virtual waysite analytics as well. And it has been not the case that Tina is mentioning was involving accident investigation, but that too, it's been been useful in accident investigation in several different states, and the timestamp element of it as well has been useful to the other states. It's even actually expanded our ability or the opportunities for us to actually go to other states. For instance, the folks in Pennsylvania may wish to know specifically about Maryland weight laws or laws that would be specific to Maryland. If they have fleets that travel in and out of Maryland, they want that Maryland perspective, even though they're a Pennsylvania company. And we've gone to numerous training programs for out-of-state government and industry, as a matter of fact.
Awesome, thank you. Derek, you had a couple of comments on the previous slide about your MOU with Georgia. Are you guys working on establishing any sharing arrangements across other boundaries, or are you primarily focusing on the Georgia boundary at the moment?
So we started off, we want it to be more of our southern states, our southeast states, that we would like to be able to have them all participate. The first initial one was with Georgia, a pilot program that we're working with them. Of course, we've had a few obstacles, of course, when you're dealing with state agencies trying to get things approved and the MOUs approved and going through the legal process of having the MOUs, implemented. But our intent is to basically mirror the Region 2 of Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance for CVSA is what we would like to do, and that's kind of our long-term goal. But right now, Georgia is our initial pilot program, if you will.
Awesome. Great. Well, that was a lot of really good background information on what types of data and how we're sharing that across not just agency boundaries, but also industry boundaries. I think it's good to go to the next slide now.
Whitney, I just want to add something.
Whitney, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add something to that. Also, with the permit violation data that we find and moves, permit loads that we found on the virtual in violation, we also share that information not only with our surrounding states, but we share that information with permit services and with brokers, because a lot of times people, like there's a handful of the shady characters that don't do things the way they're supposed to. They won't get permits, and they'll get permits for a lot less weight, and they won't get police escorts or private escorts. And the brokers have come to us and said, oh, I was wondering, after we've notified them of what's going on, then they've came to us and told us, oh, well, we were wondering why this carrier could do it so much cheaper and faster than the other ones. So then we also let the permit service know, hey, this guy's putting in wrong things. He's unviolated so many times, so that they're aware, because people that there's certain carriers that go through permit services that will change data. Like, so when they got the permits from the permit service, they actually go in with their Adobe Writer or something and take off escorts. And it looks perfect. And then this one service, actually makes a copy of every permit that they issue so that they know that it was wrong and that carrier, I mean, nobody wants to deal with a carrier who's putting out false information. Also, the brokers will go to the brokers and share the information with them. Maryland State Police have actually gone to the brokers and let them know that these guys moving unsafe, the job that they gave them, the equipment, they're moving it because, I mean, we could confiscate it technically, depending on the number of violations that we have. And then the brokers, to date that I know that any of the brokers that have been notified have canceled any future moves with these carriers and put it to the carriers that are in compliance. Also, we give heat maps, so we have loads of dimension and what roads they're traveling on. We can share that with surrounding counties. We also share that with their surrounding states. That data is priceless to them, knowing, especially for construction, enforcement, any future work that they're doing, if they have to reroute loads and what have you, just seeing prior to the shutdown or new planning for roads, we can run queries and see how many loads of dimension are moving on them roads and, figure out how we're going to detour those loads. Also, just real quick, for permit data harmonization within the groups, the CTO and the Freight Working Committee, we're working on the permit forms, the field names, and the location of data so that systems can talk to each other. We actually have the Maryland One Bentley system. Other ones have ProMiles and these other companies, so that all these systems with the field names together can talk to each other. And then the location of the data on the permit forms. So working on harmonizing that and sharing that, not only with industry, but with the states.
Awesome. That's a really great example of how is impactful.
Hey, Whitney, your audio is cutting out. Could you repeat that, please?
Whitney, we're still having a hard time hearing you. Can you repeat it?
Is that better, Anita?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for keeping me on that. All right. So again, thank you for sharing that example. I really appreciate the context and insight around across those boundaries and how it's improved the enforcement activities and route. A couple of the barriers and challenges that we've talked about in the background information, I'm sure we'll carry over to the next section here. So if you want to go to the next slide, Rachel. As we talk through what types of data and how we're sharing that, there's been lots of barriers and obstacles that we've each encountered as we've pushed through those initiatives. I'd like to hear from some of our panelists here on what obstacles we had to overcome to kind of achieve the reciprocity state that we're at now. And I think Mike Hamey has a couple of things to add first here.
Okay, thank you. With the challenges and barriers, I really look back at our C-Vision program. It helped us work through many of the barriers to successfully design, deploy, and maintain a number of projects aimed at enhancing efficiency, safety, compliance, and enforcement of commercial vehicle operations. Really, it comes down to understanding the team, understanding the objectives. There may be legislation that has to be changed to accomplish the goal, the project. Funding obviously is a barrier. So you work through all that, and our C-Vision team really helped us early on in the early 2000s to work through those programs. And it's evolved today. Even our team still meets every couple times a year to update on existing programs and talk about new initiatives. So I think we really, you have to have the core team in place. Then you have to have the objective. and everybody has to have an understanding of what's going on, so they understand what they do and how it impacts other agencies, so that we can work together to accomplish this. And you have to have industry involved. Again, you've got to have that group, that whole group involvement to be successful. So we've been very fortunate here in Kansas. We work together. All of our projects have really worked really well together. So we're excited about what's happened and what we have yet to accomplish.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Tina, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the barriers that you guys have faced to achieve the reciprocity that you guys were discussing around the permit programs?
Yes, thank you. So, and I think it's great, and going back to what Mike just stated, as his state and our state in Maryland, we work closely with their MSP or MVA, the IRP group. So whenever decisions need to be made, we try to include all the stakeholders. I know a lot of states don't have those relationships with the oversized overweight. Anyway, there's been a lot of examples in the Northeast where the states don't have those relationships with the different groups, or they're separated maybe into a different department, and then another department handles a different side of it, but they need their, especially with their state police or their enforcement groups. I think it's imperative to add and keep them looped in. I know a lot of issues come from funding. Now more than ever, there's no funds available. So I know, I'm not sure people know about all the grants and things that are out there. I know sometimes the grants, people say they need a full-time person to maneuver and fill these forms out. But being included in different groups, I think, assists in that matter, and hearing what's going on within the different regions. Technology, a lot of the technology is driving updates and processes to the processes and procedures and regulations. So if you change your processes and procedures, the regulations are still old and antiquated. I hear from a lot of states in the Northeast that it practically takes an act of Congress to get any updates and changes to the regulations. So what our division chief has done, he's gone through and removed all the policies and procedures from regulations so that the subject matter experts and the offices that actually deal with it have the latitude to make those decisions. Like, we shouldn't have to go to our administrator or our secretary or governor. Some states actually have to go through their governor to make changes to regulations, and it just makes the process a lot more drawn out. The people, and just as Mike said too, having the right people at the table making the decisions so they don't contradict or have conflicting policies. One thing that comes to mind with that was the FAST Act. I don't think the states, well, I know the states weren't involved, or bridge engineers. It's like you have to get the right people at the table to get their input instead of going back, putting something out and then coming back later and having to change or backtrack. It causes a lot of confusion in industry. It causes a lot of confusion with states. People can't keep up with that. Also, the people and the contacts. Networking makes a big difference with leadership, people that are willing to go the extra mile to make changes. I know prior to getting our Maryland One system, some of the issues were the harmonization of state data. Before we had to harmonize data within our own region before we went and reached out to other regions, other states, surrounding states. So I think that's important, including people, the bridge people, from all different areas. Even if they don't want to be there, at least they were included or invited. One of the other big problems I see is interpretation. A lot of people have to interpret things differently. So, and liability and responsibility. So if one of the people in the group are given a suggestion or an initiative or idea and they don't like it, it doesn't go any further. So I always suggest to people, send it to more than one person. You know, that person, I may not always like or include things, but send it to some other people in my group and let's see what they think. Then let's, more heads are better than one. So I think it's always important to include people.
Awesome perspective. Thank you, Tina. Mitch, what lessons learned have you guys encountered in your your initiatives that you've been pushing forward?
I don't want to repeat what's been said, but I guess I could give you an example. In Oklahoma, the Department of Transportation, we own all the facilities, we put in all the technology, and we oversee the overall program. But you've got the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, which handles more a regulatory side, and they man the ports of entry and weigh stations in conjunction with the Department of Public Safety, the High Patrol, really. They are also there doing inspections and things of that nature. And so you've got some conflicting maybe priorities or objectives, and that has caused some challenges that we've had to try to address. They have different interests in some of the screening information that's received. And so we've had to be careful on how we set up the business rules so that we accommodate all those needs. And we found that one way to deal with this is to set up interagency agreements that kind of detail who's responsible for what sections of the port and the activities that they'll conduct and how they'll work together to make it more of a seamless process. And so that's kind of the lesson we've learned, is that you just have to detail it out, whether it be by an interagency agreement or as I said, we've been real careful to craft our business rules in our electronic screening system to accommodate both needs of both agencies.
Excellent, thank you. And Derek, do you have any perspective from the enforcement standpoint on this?
I'll go back to the MOU, and I think this goes with most anything for sure, but the problem, the barriers that we've had is time. We wanted to get things done quicker, and when you're dealing with different states and different state laws and attorneys and so forth like that, it has not been implemented as quickly as we would like on our data sharing with the states. And we knew that was going to happen, but that's just been a barrier that we've had to overcome in that particular area.
We know that.
Yes. But and one last thing too. I mean, everyone talks about this, and it's extremely important. And we do. Everyone, I think, all of us in different states that we have, building good relationships in the beginning and in front end. I mean, it makes things better. Building a relationship with your legislatures, with your governor's office, and people like that. I think Tina touched on some of that earlier. But we just need to make sure that that's something that we do on the front end, because if we begin to start sharing data all across state lines or within the state or whatever, everybody, begins to, can we do this or can we not? But being able to educate on the front end has been extremely valuable for us that we've noticed in our state.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. All right, next slide, Rachel. So the other aspect of some challenges and barriers we wanted to discuss was specific to how each agency or state is ensuring, the adherence to the system architecture, the ITS architecture for these data sharing initiatives, and then barriers are being presented related to connected vehicles in each of these areas we're considering prospectively. So I think on this one, we are going to start up with Tina. We're talking a little bit here about how as architectures and the best practices and standards are maintained.
Yes, thank you. So as I was stating previously about harmonizing state data, that was a big part of bringing the city into a joint permit system within our own units within the state. Like I said, different groups referred to, just for example, bridge numbers, different groups referred to the same bridge as a different number. So it's like it's the same bridge. Can we just call it the same thing? So if someone put a restriction in, or someone was referring from the district or from an outside agency or someone who did measurements or construction, it's like we had to get that together and harmonize that data. So we're all calling the bridge, referring to it the same thing. Plus, since it's all in one system, if someone puts a restriction in, you can only look it up one way. So harmonizing data within your state and then reaching out, I think is very important. And until we got our Maryland One system, our permit system, we didn't realize I don't know that it didn't come up or it was just on the back burner, but I guess we didn't realize the differences in the data and how it affect trying to come together in one program. I think another thing is pilots. We try to go forth and move something forward, especially sharing information, sharing stuff. A lot of states don't want to be the first or be involved until they have some data to back it up. So a lot of times we'll do pilot programs to get initiatives started. And that helps overcome, to start the whole process.
Great, thanks, Tina.
The last thing I wanted to add to that was the struggles that we've encountered is, as I already kind of mentioned, was having the right people. And that, as Derek and Mitch and Mike and everybody mentioned, fostering those relationships, having send it to more than one person. Because if you give it to someone in a group or someone who's at that level, they're not connected with the background or they interpret it differently, then it's not going to move forward. Like I would suggest sending it to multiple people within a group. Invite yourself to a meeting, set up a meeting, and make them hear you. And then let them give comments back and then address their concerns or their issues with it instead of one person just nixing it. Nope, done. To try to move it forward.
Great. Thanks, Tina. That's really awesome. I love the perspective on leadership and people and how a recurring theme throughout this conversation. We're typically focused on, infrastructure.
Yes, I've actually seen a lot of things move forward with people retiring or moving on to a different agency or, moving out of the position that they are. It's like a state may be like, oh, there's no way we're ever going to do that. Or that there's no data to back it up. Well, sometimes you have to spearhead things and be a leader and do a pilot program and check it out and see how it goes. But I guess responsibility, liability, people use that a lot. I don't want to say for an excuse, but kind of for an excuse and I've seen when people have moved out of positions and new people come in with fresh eyes on it, things move forward.
Great, thank you. Let's go over to Derek and talk a little bit about some connected vehicle infrastructure with your fiber network and bypass system.
Sorry about that. So Florida DOT and their motor carrier size and weight, which is over all of their scale operations, they're deploying a statewide fiber optic network to facilitate communication with and between all of the facilities that they have throughout the state. And the arching goal of this is to enhance mobility and keep trucks and keep commodities moving. This network is, of course, following the architectural guidelines for ITS projects. And motor carrier size and weight, they are sharing this data, and they want to share this data from its facilities with roadside enforcement through web-based applications. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we'll expand this into our neighboring states. And again, hopefully we want to be able to leverage our Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance and any other our trucking associations and involve those type folks in being able to get the word out and information out of what we're doing. But being able to have this fiber optic network, we've got an example of a truck that's going to be coming through in Pensacola on the west side of the state. All of that information from that truck will be able to be provided to the next weigh stations all the way down to the Florida Keys, to that weigh station there, to know where it was and where it was tracked, when an oversized permit was checked, to be able to keep that truck moving and out of the weigh stations if it's already been verified and checked and it's in compliance. So we're excited about this project that DOT has and moving forward. It's going to be a great project for being able to do different projects, whether it be signal priority and things of that nature in the future.
Awesome. All right, next slide, Rachel. So as we talk through some of the challenges and barriers that we faced and some of the background information about what data and how we share it, I think the most exciting part of the conversation is about what we're going to do with all of that and what's on the horizon and what's next. So as we look to talk about some opportunities here, next slide, please. We're going to start discussing some of the steps that have been taken, and we've touched on this a little bit in the conversation already, so I don't expect to have a lot more detail here, but definitely interested in hearing from our panelists again on how we've been able to achieve some of the success and what other opportunities we're going to be pursuing to continue to leverage data sharing across industry, state barriers, and even regional boundaries. So I think, Mike, you have a couple of things to discuss here first.
Thank you. Very similar to what we've already discussed here. I think the keys to success are, have a solid plan. You need to meet regularly with the team. MOUs are extremely important because you get the agency heads, the secretaries, the commissioners, the chairs involved from the top down, so that you have interest buy-in from the start of the program. And then it goes back then just to having that qualified team, that core team. The funding has to be in place. Let technology drive what you're doing. You can do more with less. Technology is amazing if you can involve that in all the programs, and then just have that direction and vision with the team, and then just communicate that with all involved, sister agencies, the industry that's going to impact. And to me, those have been solid keys for us here in Kansas.
Great, thank you. Mitch, do you want to discuss a little bit about your interoperability initiatives?
Sure. I mean, I feel like we are kind of repeating a little bit, but yes, I mean, we're working through those technical solutions to try to aid in, the number of objectives that ODOT has in protecting our infrastructure, the DPS and Troop S's goal and safety, and then the regulatory revenue side that is necessary for OCC and other agencies to do their jobs. And what's been great is that, we have a number of technology consultants that we partner with, and they've helped us drive those improvements in not only the operations of our ports, but planning for the future to get our interior way stations and our virtual stations all connected to where it is interoperable, and it leads to a safer system across the state.
Great, thank you. Rachel, we want to go to the next slide. As we near the close of the discussion here, I'd really be interested to hear from the rest of our panelists on what other initiatives, what are the new things that we're doing to help improve data sharing. I think we can start with Derek.
I would think with integrating commercial vehicle data with other systems to support mobility is going to be key. I think this can include, as I mentioned just a second ago, was freight signaling priority, truck parking availability systems, and those lines. Access within our ports, especially Florida has a lot of those, and being able to move freight in and out of those locations. So I think the integration of all the data and being able to communicate with each other is going to be key in keeping trucks moving across the state. Number one, not just moving, but also safely, and they've been checked and they're verified and they have the permits and so forth they're supposed to have. And then also at that point, being able to share the data across the state lines of where these vehicles are going, so everyone can make a better informed decision about the trucks that are moving into their area. And at the end of the day, we want to drive down fatalities and keep trucks and drivers that are safe on the roadway, and put the ones that are not off. And then having the data and the information to make those decisions and those informed decisions is going to be critical in the future.
Great, thank you. Dwayne, do you want to provide a little bit of insight about the training outreach and the initiatives that you're looking to push forward with more data sharing within your industry partnerships?
Sure. Just to reiterate the fact that availability is key going forward. That be able to have an open line of communication with industry to facilitate them being voluntarily compliant with the regulations, and holding carriers accountable so that it provides a situation where motor carriers can compete on an even playing field. If you have an individual who's not cutting corners and that they're doing everything correctly, then they shouldn't be losing contracts as a result of it because of someone who is not playing by the game rules. So as far as that goes, it's just the ability to hold carriers accountable and provide the availability for the most up-to-date training for them. And to know that they can call anytime and get the information. That's key.
Great, thank you. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So we've had a lot of good discussion about, the background of what's shared, how it's shared, what barriers and challenges we faced, and the opportunities that we have in front of us to help improve our data sharing. We've had a couple of questions, so I think we'll go ahead and take those now and wrap up, if that's okay. So, Anita, go ahead.
Yep, let's go ahead. We have a couple. One of them may have been answered already. The first one was for Mike regarding data with industry partners. Who are some of these partners, and was it easy or difficult to obtain these partners? I think we've pretty much covered that, but do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think it's just the number of partners out there. It's the Motor Carrier Association. It's the Kansas Farm Bureau. It's all the different associations. Just being able to communicate and share data with them to help them on the regulatory side and to better educate their members.
Okay, great. Question for Dwayne. What kind of safety violation data are you sharing? And you may have covered this too, but we'll just review that.
Anything associated with the North American Roadside Inspection Program, the safety data from the Virtual Weigh Site program. Typically, it's size and weight issues. However, you have the ability to observe mechanical defects, load securement issues, and things of that nature as well. So if we're able to convey that to a carrier once we identify who that is, then that's pushed out to them. And the other advantage, of course, is that if it screens them at real time, so it avoids any delays in a weigh and inspection facility. If everything appears to be screened properly and they're in compliance, they can keep on going down the road. So that's the type of information that we share with the industry.
Perfect. Thanks, Dwayne. Mitch, one for you. Mitch uses technology consultants, which have been really a benefit. Is this new, or have technology consultants always been available and used in the past?
Oh, I've used technology consultants ever since I started the program, and I have a consultant that helps me with the overall program. And then we have Iteris, who does one of the technology firms we use, and then also International Road Dynamics. So we've used them for a while. It's nothing new, and it's been very beneficial because we just don't have the expertise in some of these areas.
Great, thanks, Mitch. I'm going to turn it over to you, Whitney, to close us out.
Excellent. You can go to the next slide, Rachel. All right. Well, I really appreciate everybody's time today, and it's been really great to hear from all of our panelists. And just in a way of closing here, as we look at all of these opportunities and the technology that's around us, it's really imperative to broaden our perspective so that we can continue to share data across the state, regional, and federal boundaries and continue to involve industry in this conversation as well. So I think, as Rachel mentioned, this will be posted for everyone to have access to the recorded session. And then we will also be able to send out any responses to questions received that did not get an answer live. So with that, I will hand back to Rachel.
Great. Thank you so much, Whitney. I appreciate our speakers. I appreciate Iteris' time today on this great webinar. And I appreciate you all for joining in. We hope to see you at the next webinar. And I hope you all have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.